Hey everyone, it's Kristen. So this will be the last part on the Killing Joke. Last part in this series. Like I said last time, I ran a little long, going off on a tangent about history, and I apologize, but I just think it's really cool that anytime comic books connect with history like that, it's fun to talk about that connection. Yes, still in costume. This will probably be this will be the last time I wear this costume. Well, I can't promise that. We'll see. I mean, we'll see how this goes. I mean, if everyone's like, wow, that's just dumb, then obviously I won't do that again. But I mean, if it gets a good response, then I, probably could use this costume again for future Batman stories. Like, there's a story that I want to talk about that I've mentioned twice during this series. The Batman's No Man's Land storyline that was ran for all of 1999. And it was very iconic because it introduced Harley Quinn, who's such a huge part of the Batman legacy now. I mean, it's, she had, recently she had her own movies. You go to comic book conventions and there are so many girls dressed up like her. I will never dress up like her because, like, I feel like I don't think I could pull her off, and there's a lot of girls dressed like her. So I don't, I just don't think I could pull that off. But but she would be fun to dress up as, and plus, like, there's effort, a lot of effort that can go into cosplays and stuff like that, and money also. I mean, the costumes aren't really like cheap. Like, I have, I want to say, I don't know, I think at least maybe 10 superhero costumes, maybe. It might be one or two less than that, but I don't know. It's been a while since I've worn any of them because, the pandemic and stuff. Anyway, I digress. I apologize. So, last part of the Killing Joke. So when we left, in the last video, Joker was saying all about how, this whole thing is just one big joke. Like, how come you don't think it's funny? Like, why don't you get it? And Batman's like, because I've heard it before and it's not funny. It wasn't funny the first time. So, Batman's like, by the way, I spoke to Commissioner Gordon and he's fine. Despite all your efforts, he's still saying he's fine. And so so Joker, is not happy with that because that was his whole goal, is to prove that just one bad day can turn someone into, him, basically. So he tries to poison Batman, tries to eye gouge him, hits him over the head with the 2x4, has a knife, just, there's the big fight scene. And I mean, Joker, we've talked about, like, in the Psychology of Superheroes, the 10 Most Dangerous Villains, those video series, that he's not, like, the greatest physical fighter, but, he has, like, this conniving mind. Like, you never kind of know what he's going to do, that sort of thing, and that's what makes him such a wild card. Wild card. Sorry. Didn't even mean to make that pun. Joker playing cards. Wild card. Anyway. So we get to the next one. Joker's down. He gets his gun out. And he's like, dang it, it's empty. And he's like, Joker's like, well, what are you waiting for? I terrorized, I shot a defenseless girl. I terrorized an old man. What are you waiting for? Just beat me, like, basically beat me to death and get it over with. And Batman's like, I don't want to hurt you. Like, I want to understand you. I want to know what made you like this. Like, maybe if you tell me, maybe I could help. Maybe I've been there before. Maybe I can help you through it. Like, I don't want to kill you. I don't want to hurt you. You know, we don't have to kill each other is what he's basically saying. And Joker, you know, he thinks about it for a second and he's like, no, it's too late for me. And Joker's like, you know, this situation reminds me of a joke. And so basically the joke that Joker tells is he's like, there's these two guys that are trying to escape the asylum. One guy, in order to get to freedom, because they're on the roof, they have to jump to the next building. And of course, there's a big gap in between. The first guy jumps, no problem. The second guy is scared. He's scared to fall. And so the first guy says, sorry, that was bothering me. The first guy says, well, hey, just, you know, jump. You'll be fine. He's like, no, I can't. You know, I'm scared. And he's the first guy who's on the other roof says, oh, I have a flashlight. You know, I'll turn it on and you just have to walk across the beam of light in order to get over here. And the second guy, he says, what, are you crazy? You're just going to turn it off halfway through. And that's the joke. And so Joker, of course, starts laughing. And Batman, you know, he kind of laughs a little bit. And so, you know, I don't know, I'm sure this was intentional, but you can see like there's this beam of light cutting through the puddle, and then there's a gap between it. See, there's a gap, and there's the beam of light, and then there's no light. So, you know, kind of basically a nod to what they just said, the joke that he just told. Okay, so the artist of the book wrote and illustrated this very short story that is at the end of this, which, like I said, that's one of the most iconic Batman stories. For one, you know, it tells the origin of the Joker, which hadn't really been done before up to that point. Two, you see, you know, Batgirl, she, you know, can no longer be Batgirl. Like, Joker doesn't even know that that's what he did, that he, you know, destroyed Batgirl, basically. She can't walk anymore. Although, okay, I will say that when DC redid their universe, part of the New 52 is what they called it in 2011, they made it to where she had surgery and she could walk again. And so Barbara Gordon did resume her duties, so to speak, as Batgirl, which, because comic book publishers, they do that a lot. Like, they'll revamp or redo or restart their comic book universes because they feel like most comic book readers don't want to be bogged down in all the, like, backstory and history of comic books, which I think is sad because that's, like, you know, something I really enjoy is like hearing the stories, like, and knowing, you know, knowing the history of all these characters. So, but I mean, Marvel did the same thing. I mean, they've done it, you know, not just once, but I mean, the most notable to me, I guess, is Heroes Reborn that they did after the Onslaught story, which that's a really good story. Like, it, I don't know if you know about that one. Well, I think we'll probably do a video series on that one because that's a really good story. I really enjoyed that story. Mostly because it centers on the X-Men, and you know how I feel about the X-Men. So, anyway, so, you know, comic book publishers, they do that to try to hopefully draw in new readers. But, of course, sometimes that can, you know, push away the fans who have been around for quite a while. Because they're like, well, now you're just basically taking away everything that made that character that character. Sometimes they redo origin stories, you know, or sometimes they keep them the same. You know, it depends on who's writing it. And usually everything that's done, you know, can be undone. Like, obviously what happened here, you know, Barbara Gordon can no longer be Batgirl, but then they changed that later on. And just like people dying in comic books, that really honestly means nothing. Pretty much everyone that dies in comic books, doesn't stay dead for the most part. So it's, anyway, it's a soap opera. As I've said many, many times, comic books are kind of like a soap opera. So anyway, this very last little story, it's hard to tell what age he is, but he mentions something later that tells us that he's in college, probably. And so this guy is sitting, he's filming himself talking, and he's saying basically like, I don't consider myself a bad person. I consider myself a good person. Like, I am good to my girlfriend. I'm good to my parents. I go to church every Sunday. And he says something like, something I guess that would definitely spark or could spark a debate. He says that the only reason that people are good is because they're scared of either going to jail or hell. And he said the only way to truly be good is if you do something good and you do something bad and you find out that being good makes you feel better. That's the only way to really be good, is what he says. Which, yeah, I don't think that's true, but I understand, what he's getting at. And of course, this person's a little bit out there because, you'll understand by what he says next. And then he also says he wants to do something just really bad, really horrible, just once in his life. Just because, just to do it. And he's like, it has to be, something that he gets nothing from, no motivation for him, just something terrible. So his first thought is to kidnap a little girl and chain her in the sewer and just let her starve to death. And he's like, no, that's not big enough. It needs to be like the death of John Lennon, killing a celebrity. And he talks about maybe killing the Pope, but, he's like, well, I never go to Italy, and he's surrounded by guards, so it's not the Pope. And then he's like, it's got to be someone local, and so he settles on Batman. Like, he's going to kill Batman, and that's going to be his one horrible deed. And he's like, it's not going to be a problem. I have a gun that my dad gave me, and he taught me how to shoot. So, he'll do the crime, and he won't leave a calling card, like a playing card, like Joker does, or a two-headed coin, like Two-Face does. He'll just leave without a trace. And he's like, Batman could be, listening to me right now, everything I say, but he wouldn't do that because he's a good guy. And then he talks about how Batman's probably out there right now, protecting the city, facing off with Two-Face, tangling with Poison Ivy, or stopping gangs, or, clashing with Penguin in some elaborate, setting. Yeah, it's a giant typewriter. And he said once he's won, he'll leave the bad guys to contemplate, their choices, their bad choices. He'll be illuminated in light and turn, and there'll just be a glint, and then all of a sudden, and he'll be dead. And this guy who's talking says, he'll definitely be missed. And he's saying, don't get me wrong, I won't miss. He will definitely, Batman will definitely be dead, but I'll miss him, because he does keep everyone safe. And I've always been his greatest fan, but I'm also his greatest enemy. So he said he would leave, the crime scene before anyone showed up to find Batman without a trace. And because there's nothing to connect him to Batman's murder, there'd be no motivation for him killing Batman, that he would just get away with it. And then he'd go on to live his life, finish his college education, marry his girlfriend, have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, hopefully, and then go to heaven when he dies. And yeah, I'm like, wow, that's kind of like the questions that Alan Moore raised in The Killing Joke. Just moral questions of like what really does make a person good, what motivates them. I mean, there's all different kinds of reasons, but for him to to be like, well, the only way you can be truly good is if you've done really bad stuff, and then you decide that being good feels better. I mean, I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, for me, for me, like, okay, for example, I used to play WoW, World of Warcraft, all the time. Like, there were days there were times when I just play it like 3 days straight in a row. I wouldn't sleep or anything. One of those times was during finals week. Oh, I can't believe I even made it through finals, to be honest. But my point is, I would never choose the Horde. I was always Alliance. All my characters were Alliance because the Horde, and I got into a huge debate with someone about this, the Horde are the bad guys. Because the debate was, well, they're not really the bad guys, but in most, and I guess on the surface sense, they are. Anyway, so I can, and like playing Fable, where, based on your choices, you go one way or the other. Like, I couldn't even kick the chicken. Like, there was that side quest where you had to kick a chicken, and you had to kick, so many. I couldn't even bring myself to do it. I was just like, nope, I don't want to be bad. I don't want to be evil. Like, I always want to be, the good guy, so to speak. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's boring, and well, to some people it is, I know, but like, I could never bring myself to not be that person, I guess. Not be, the supposed good guy. So I think that's I think that kind of lends to what he's saying. So at the very end of the book, it's just like some of his sketch pages. Like, here's the photograph he used of himself to create the iconic cover. And then he, has pictures of all the other things in The Killing Joke and in his original story that he's done. And he just talked a little bit about those. And yeah. So that's it. I mean, I hope you enjoyed this video series. I really honestly should have put on the beginning of this video series, disclaimer, this story is a little disturbing. I guess I can still put that on there when I mean, yeah. I'll add that to the description because it's definitely not a comic book story in a sense. It's definitely a darker Batman story, so to speak. Like, you would never find a story like this in Avengers, for example, or even in X-Men. It's definitely a Batman story because of who Batman is, and a lot to do with who the Joker is. I mean, he is basically, deranged, and that story, or this story, reflects that. So anyway, it is a little, it is disturbing, but it's definitely one of the most iconic Batman stories out there. I think because it showcases and highlights who Joker is. So, I hope you enjoyed this video series, and I hope you, I don't know what else to say. Like, I hope you enjoyed this video series, and I hope you don't think I'm too weird for doing it in costume. So, I hope you join me for future videos, and who knows, we'll see. They might be in costume too. You never know. So that's why you should subscribe, just so you can see if I ever do any other videos in costume. So until next time, bye.